one does not factually satisfy the Lord. Rather, with the sanction of the Lord, one tries to satisfy one's own. The words, materialists who are especially interested in sense gratification are given permission or license to enjoy sense gratification by executing the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. That is called Trigunya Vishaya Veda. The Vedic performances are based on three modes of material nature. Those who are elevated above the material condition are not at all interested in such Vedic performances. Rather, they are interested in the higher duties of transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such devotional service is called Nishtraigunya. Devotional service to the Lord has nothing to do with the material conception of bodily comfort. Well, throughout all the Vedic knowledge, the preoccupation that people have for sense gratification can corrupt even the Vedic practices. That's why it says it here. How can a highly learned person who has absolutely no affinity for the bodily conception of life be affected by the bodily conception in regard to house, children, wealth, and similar other bodily productions? Well, in other words, it's ironic what's being said here because although people can be very highly, let's say, educated and be, advanced, seemingly advanced in spiritual life, but are still attached to family and to the body. Therefore, their devotional service is corrupted by the weakness that they have for sense gratification. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Vedic ritualistic ceremonies are certainly meant to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. However, by such activities, one does not factually satisfy the Lord. Rather, with the sanction of the Lord, one tries to satisfy one's own senses. In other words, materialists who are especially interested in sense gratification are given permission or license to enjoy sense gratification by executing the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. That is called Trigunya Vishaya Veda. The Vedic performances are based on three modes of material nature. Those who are elevated above the material condition are not at all interested in such Vedic performances. Rather, they are interested in the higher duties of transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such devotional service is called Nishtraigunya. Devotional service to the Lord has nothing to do with the material conception of bodily comfort. Well, this is what you would call the real, let's say, line that just differentiates a Vishali, is a sense gratifier, and a devotee. The sense gratifier also can engage in seemingly, let's say, spiritual activities, but their real purpose is to enjoy sense gratification. On the other hand, one can perform the Vedic different, say, the different activities without seeking to have sense gratification. So this is like a subtle thing. Uh, Two people are performing activities that look the same, but yet they're not. So people get confused. Therefore, that's why one needs to have a spiritual master, because the spiritual master can help the devotee stay on the plan on the path of pure devotional service and not deviate to mundane activities. Therefore, it says here, the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies are certainly meant to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu. However, by such activities, one does not actually satisfy the Lord. Rather, with the sanction of the Lord, one tries to satisfy one's own senses. And that's a very profound statement. And this is what's going on uh, throughout the world, that people are engaging in different types of what you would call spiritual activities. It looks like it's spiritual activities, but the real purpose that people have in their mind is sense gratification. Therefore, it says here, in other words, materialists who are especially interested in sense gratification are given permission or license to enjoy sense gratification by executing the Vedic ritualist ceremonies. That is called Traigunya Vishaya Veda. The Vedic performances are based on three modes of material nature. Those who are elevated above the material condition are not at all interested in such Vedic performances. Yeah, that's why it says Nistraigunya of Arjuna. Arjuna rise above the mundane Vedic performances. So, how do you rise above the mundane Vedic performances? See, this is why you have to have a spiritual master. Some people cannot differentiate between mundane spiritual activities and transcendental spiritual activities. So, therefore, it says, those who are elevated above the material condition are not at all interested in such Vedic performances. Rather, they are interested in the higher duties of transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such devotional service is called Nistragunya. Devotional service to the Lord has nothing to do with the material conception of bodily comfort. Well, the real, let's say, principle here is that one should not perform any spiritual activity with the hope or the desire for bodily comforts or bodily sense gratification. One should have pure devotional service. Now, someone might say, well, wait a minute. I'm just an ordinary person. You're asking me to do something that seems impossible. No, it's not really impossible, but we have to be able to differentiate between materially motivated so-called spiritual activities and pure devotional service. That is the whole, let's say, lesson that is being talked about here. It is possible for a person to engage in mundane, let's say, activities that seem to be spiritual, but the goal is not to be completely dedicated to Krishna. It's rather for their own satisfaction or sense gratification. That's why you need to have a bona fide spiritual master. Uh, Otherwise, very easily people can deviate from the path of pure devotional service and engage in selfish activity that satisfies their material desires. So, let's see what it says here. It says, those who are elevated above the material condition are not at all interested in such Vedic performances. Rather, they are interested in the higher duties of transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such devotional service is called Nishtragunya. Devotional service to the Lord has nothing to do with the material conception of bodily comfort. Okay, so this has always been a problem in spiritual life. You don't want your spiritual life to become corrupted by material desires. That would, and that's why this verse is talking about that. One can seem to be engaged in devotional activities, but their real purpose is sense gratification. Okay, and that's why it says that, in other words, materialists who are especially interested in sense gratification are given permission or license to enjoy sense gratification by executing the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. That is called Traigunya Vishaya Veda. The Vedic performances are based on the three modes of material nature. Those who are elevated above the material condition are not at all interested in such Vedic performances. Rather, they are interested in the higher duties of transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such devotional service is called Nishtragunya. Devotional service to the Lord has nothing to do with the material conception of bodily comfort. Now you can ask a question and say, well, wait a minute. How come it says that the sanction of the with the sanction of the Lord, one tries to satisfy one's own senses? In other words, materialists who are especially interested in sense gratification are given permission or license to enjoy sense gratification by executing the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. So this seems to be double talk. On the one hand, Krishna is permitting people who are very materially, let's say, attracted to sense gratification to engage in activities like that. And on the other hand, one should give up those type of activities and be engaged in pure devotional service. So it's something like trying to attract a animal by offering the animal something to eat. So you can control animals by enticing them with something to eat. But that doesn't mean that they are, let's say, going to be attracted to what you're offering them. Oftentimes, animals will run away from home. And then if you run after them, they just keep running. So then some people try and entice the animal by offering something to eat. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But in Krishna consciousness, and here it says, the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies are certainly meant to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. However, by such activities, one does not factually satisfy the Lord. And that's a real problem. Rather, with the sanction of the Lord, one tries to satisfy one's own senses. In other words, materialists who are especially interested in sense gratification are given permission or license to enjoy sense gratification by executing the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. That is called Trigunya Vishaya Veda. The Vedic performances are based on three modes of material nature. Those who are elevated above the material condition are not at all interested in such Vedic performances. Rather, they are interested in the higher duties of transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such devotional service is called Nistraigunya. Devotional service to the Lord has nothing to do with the material conception of bodily comfort. So one can be engaged in what seems to be devotional activities, but in reality, it's just an excuse for sense gratification. So that's why you have to have a bona fide spiritual master who can differentiate between activities that are materially motivated and activities that are purely dedicated to serving Krishna. The difference is sacrifice. When one is willing to sacrifice their time, their energy, and their, let's say, desires to please the Lord rather than to please themselves, that becomes devotional service. But one can do activities that seem to be spiritually motivated, but they're actually for one's own sense gratification. This is a problem. And it's a problem that a devotee has to rise above from. Go to actually ask yourself a question: is what I am doing really meant to please Krishna, or is it meant for my own sense gratification? Right? So, if you look at the activities of great devotees, they're willing to sacrifice everything in their life to please Krishna. And if you look at people who are engaged in some kind of spiritual activity, but their only purpose is to maintain sense gratification. And that's why you need a spiritual master who can help one differentiate between pure devotional service and corrupted devotional service. Okay, so the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies are certainly meant to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. However, by such activities, one does not factually satisfy the Lord. This is the problem. You would think that, well, I'm engaged in spiritual activity, but everything depends on the motive. Just like even in, let's say, in a mundane life, if someone commits a crime, the police always try and find out what was the motive that led the person to commit the crime. So here also, it says that by such activities, one does not factually satisfy the Lord. Rather, with the sanction of the Lord, in other words, the permission of the Lord, one tries to satisfy one's own senses. In other words, materialists who are especially interested in sense gratification are given permission or license to enjoy sense gratification by executing the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. That is called Trigunya Vishaya Veda. The Vedic performances are based on the three modes of material nature. Well, that's why it says Nistraigunya Bhavarjana. Arjuna, rise above the Vedic performances. And therefore it says, those who are elevated above the material condition are not at all interested in such Vedic performances. Rather, They're interested in the higher duties of transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such devotional service is called Nishtragunya. Devotional service to the Lord has nothing to do with the material conception of bodily comfort. Well, waking up early, very early every day, taking a bath, coming to the temple, engaging in devotional service, it's something that not everybody likes to do. But it's necessary if one wants to be a genuine devotee. And it's a type of tapasya. But tapasya, when done happily, is pure devotional service. And when it's done grudgingly, it's not really devotional service. It's because the person is not really satisfied by doing it. So those who are elevated above material modes of material nature, those who are elevated above the material condition are not at all interested in such Vedic performances. Rather, they are interested in the higher duties of transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such devotional service is called Nishtragunya. Devotional service to the Lord has nothing to do with the material conception of bodily comfort. Well, we have to be very careful to understand what is pure devotional service and what is compromised devotional service. Compromised devotional service will do things that are for our own satisfaction. Pure devotional service are performed only for the satisfaction of Krishna. Now, how do we differentiate between the two? Because both seem to be related to devotional service. Well, yeah, the person who is completely dedicated to pleasing Krishna will engage in many activities without desire for sense gratification. Whereas a person who is corrupted will engage in devotional activities, but only for their own sense gratification. Now, someone can say, well, how can you tell the difference? Well, that's why one needs a spiritual master who can help the devotee understand the difference between selfish activities for sense gratification and pure activities for pleasing the Lord. The whole point is, how can the question that we should ask ourselves, am I doing this service to please the Lord, or am I doing it for my own sense gratification? So that question has to be asked because everything depends on the motive a person has. So if our motive is to please the Lord, that means that we'll be ready to do anything that necessary to please the Lord. Sometimes those activities may not seem to be something pleasurable. They might seem to be very difficult to perform. I remember when I was a brand new devotee, Tamal Krishna Maharaj was my, let's say, guide in spiritual life. And he would ask me to do things that I really did not want to do. And one time there was this wealthy man, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj told me, you have to convince him to, he was a businessman. He said, you have to convince him to not make us pay money, but to offer his services for free. And I said to him, how can I do that? If this guy's a materialist, his whole life is making money, and you want me to convince him to give us, his services for free. He said, "You do it." And I felt really uncomfortable because the man who I was dealing with was a really nice person, very, very nice person. But I had to ask him to give us free what he would normally charge people, right? So I tried my best, and the person, the businessman, he got really frustrated. He didn't get angry, but he got really frustrated because that's not business. That's something else, right? And I'm not a relative of his. I'm not, and I just recently had connected to him, but he eventually offered his services free, but he didn't really like it, you know. But I was so adamant that he just said, okay, just to get rid of me. He said, okay. And he gave me, what I was asking for free. So that was Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He was a real trainer of devotees. And oftentimes he would ask me to do things that seemed to be impossible. But he said, you figure it out, but you have to do this. So I would always, be horrified by it because I'd have to ask people to do things that I would never even think of asking. So that's part of training in Krishna consciousness. Sometimes you're asked to do something that you would never do normally. And sometimes you're asked not to do things that you would normally do all the time. So this is, what you would call spiritual training. We have to rise above our comfort zone and come to the level of Krishna consciousness. Just like Prabhupada is 70 years old, he's living in Vrindavan, and all of a sudden he decides to come to the United States, very, very far away from his home in Vrindavan, and without any friends, without any money, and start the Hare Krishna movement. Now, just imagine how difficult that is, right? But he did it. He did it, and but he didn't. He was not successful in the first 6 months to a year, but he didn't give up. And then because he continued, so, I mean, every time he would go and visit the steamship company and see when's the next ship back to India. And but he never actually bought the ticket to go back. Uh, and the steamship people, they would say, well, you're always coming here asking when the next ship is, but you never buy a ticket, So anyway, Prabhupada uh, became adamantly dedicated to trying to please his spiritual master. And therefore, although it was difficult for him to do that, he persevered the difficulties, and he succeeded. But in the beginning, it was very difficult for him, very, very difficult, because he could have easily stayed in Vrindavan and have a very nice life. But he came all the way across the ocean to New York City and tried to start the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra chanting and helping hippies basically become devotees. That's not easy to do. But he was able to do it because he was determined to please his guru and determined to establish Krishna consciousness in the Western world. Okay, so uh, therefore it says here, the Vedic performances are based on the three modes of material nature. That means that they're self-interested activities. Those who are elevated above the material condition are not at all interested in such Vedic performances. Rather, they are interested in the higher duties of transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, what's the difference? The difference is one does not expect anything in return for the service that they're doing. Now, this might seem something impossible. Like, for example, if a businessman says, "You come and work for me, but I will not give you any money," would you do it? Huh? Would you do it? No, you wouldn't do it. But basically, that's what's being said here, that as a devotee, you're going to be willing to give all your services without getting any money. Uh, so, is that something possible? Yeah, it is possible, but it is a great sacrifice. That's what spiritual life is. That you have to sacrifice so many things to advance in spiritual life. Now, what is it that we have to sacrifice? Meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, intoxication, and selfish activities, and so forth. Is it something that we can do? Well, for some people, it's impossible to do. They're not gonna do it. But if you want to be a devotee, you have to do that. But actually, I'll give you an example. A long, long time ago, very, very early in the morning, I was going on the parikram in Vrindavan. And at a certain point, we were supposed to go into the Ganga. And it was cold. The weather was cold. And, we had to, take most of our clothes off and go into the water. And I really didn't want to do that. But because I was with a bunch of other devotees and they were all, going to do that. So I didn't want to, say I'm not going to do it. So I did, put on my gumsha, took my clothes off, put on the gumsha, and I went into the water. As soon as I touched the water, it was very cold. It was very, very cold. But as I went more deeper into the water, eventually the water came up to my neck. I didn't feel cold anymore. Then I realized that Ganga Devi was being very kind. That although the water near the entrance was very cold, when we came deeper into the water, it was actually warm, right? So I didn't feel any discomfort at all. And I was able to bathe in the Ganga. And then we continued the parikram around Vrindavan. So sometimes we're, let's say, faced with doing something that we really don't want to do. But because there are other people around us and everybody is doing it, we sort of go along with them. But then we find out that actually our, let's say, perception was wrong, that Krishna's mercy is always going to be there. So when I did go deeper into the Ganga, it was warm. It was not cold at all. But in the beginning, it was very cold. Right? And I had to take my clothes off and just have a gumsha and go right into the Ganga. It was like 4:30 in the morning. The weather was very cold. But when I got into the water, it was actually warm. Then I realized this is Krishna's mercy. So sometimes we have fear, sometimes we have doubts, sometimes we are hesitant to do things in Krishna consciousness, but we shouldn't be, we shouldn't hesitate. As long as it's Krishna conscious activity, we should do it and not think that it's impossible to do. Okay, so uh, text number 7. The individual soul is one, pure, non-material, and self-effulgent. He is the reservoir of all good qualities, and he is all-pervading. He is without material covering, and he is the witness of all activities. He is completely distinguished from other living entities, and he is transcendental to all embodied souls. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the previous verse, two significant words are used. Asamsakta, meaning without attachment, and Buddha, meaning fully cognizant of everything. By full cognizance, it is meant that one should know about his own constitutional position as well as the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Well, what's the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? He's the Supreme Lord. No one is equal to him, no one is greater than him. And everything he does is pure and is transcendental. So, but one by full cognizance, it is meant that one should know about his own constitutional position as well as the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Well, our own constitutional position is to be subordinate to the Lord and to follow the instructions of the Lord. That's our real position. We are not the Lord. We are the servants of the Lord. So that's the first thing you have to learn in Krishna consciousness. You have to learn to surrender to the Lord. Some people can do it, and some people can't do it. Most of the people have a very difficult time surrendering to the Lord and engaging full-time in devotional service. It seems to be so much different than regular life. You know, in regular life, you buy a very nice bed. It's nice and soft, and you spend a lot of money on the bed so that you can adjust it. You know, like you can make it harder or you can make it softer. You know, you ever see beds like that? They're very expensive, and people buy them. Right? Then, as a devotee, I remember when I was a devotee, and in the beginning, I would sleep at the door of the toilet so that uh, I would have to wake up early, very early in the morning, like 3 o'clock, because people would try to get into the toilet and they have to step over me. So I thought, let me sleep at the door of the toilet and I'll definitely be able to wake up. But if I sleep somewhere else, I'll try and keep sleeping, you know. So this way, you know, people had to either step on me or over me, but they would wake me up. So anyway, I got used to waking up early, whereas before it was impossible for me to wake up very early. I'd never done it before. But those are things that you learn when you're a neophyte devotee. Also, I never really liked to take cold showers. But when I joined the movement, there was only a cold shower, and there was only one shower, and about 30 or 40 people that had to get into the shower, take a bath, and come out. So as soon as I would first go in the bathroom and in the toilet, as soon as I entered the toilet and sat down, they started banging on the door. I said, okay, wait a minute. No, they kept banging on the door. You know, so I got so, stressed that I couldn't do anything. I just got out, right? So this went on day after day. And also it was said at that time that you can only pass stool once in a day, and that's in very early in the morning, before Mangalarti. So I was trying to do that, but on the other hand, as soon as I go into the toilet, they would start banging on the door because there are like 30 people that have to take a bath in order to get ready to go to the Mangalarti. So at a certain point, after about a week, I went to see the temple president. I said, Prabhu, I said, I don't think I can do this. He said, why is that? I said, well, it's too difficult. I can't. He said, is it because you're attached to sense gratification, to sex? I said, no, I can control that. He said, what is it? He said, I just can't control myself.
The motor movement.
Waking up really early and trying to, pass stool, and then people banging on the door, and then I can't do it. And now it's been almost 4 or 5 days I couldn't go to the toilet because the devotee said you can only pass stool early in the morning. So if you can't do it early in the morning, then you have to wait till the next morning. So I said to my temple president, I said, look, I can't follow Krishna consciousness. He said, what is it? Are you attached to sex gratification? I said, no, I can control that. He said, then what is it? I said, I can't pass stool early in the morning. And every time I try to do it, people are banging on the door. And I get so, uh, you know, stressed that I can't pass stool. And it's been like 5 days now. I haven't been able to pass stool. And the devotees say you can only pass stool early in the morning. You can't do it the rest of the day. See, these are the type of myths that develop in Krishna consciousness, amongst uh, new devotees. And the temple president said, well, listen, that's not true. You can pass stool any time of the day. When he said that, I felt so much relief that I said, okay, then I'm going to stick around here. But when you have a whole bunch of people and they're all neophytes, uh, all these types of strange behaviors develop. So it's always good to have more advanced devotees who have a lot of experience in Krishna consciousness to as advisors, so that you don't fall into these traps of being forced to do something that is impossible for you to do. Okay, so Prabhupada never asked us to pass stool only once a day, and that has to be 4 o'clock in the morning. And if you don't do it, then you have to wait till the next day. Those type of ideas are developed artificially by neophyte devotees who want to pretend to be highly elevated devotees. In other words, their idea was you're only allowed to pass stool once a day. If you do it twice a day or 3 times a day, you're nonsense. So, that was the idea. That's what I was taught when I was a brand new devotee. And then eventually I went to the temple president. I said, look, I can't follow Krishna consciousness. I'm going to leave. He said, why is that? Are you attached to sex gratification? I said, no. He said, then what's the problem? I said, I can't follow your rule here that you can only pass stool 4 o'clock in the morning. And if you can't do it, then you have to wait till the next day. He said, well, who told you that? I said, that's what the other guys were telling me. So he said, no, there's no rule like that. And when he said that, I felt very, very comfortable. I said, okay, I can now follow Krishna consciousness. So that's the problem of being in the association of new devotees. All these myths or these concepts are developed uh, for mundane types of sacrifice that are not actually true. So we have to be very careful. We should always be in the association of more advanced devotees who can give us a balanced, uh, let's say, way of practicing Krishna consciousness. Okay, so text number 7. The individual soul is one, pure, non-material, and self-effulgent. He is the reservoir of all good qualities, and he is all pervading. He is without material covering, and he is the witness of all activities. He is completely distinguished from other living entities, and he is transcendental to all embodied souls. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the previous verse, two significant words are used. Asamsakta, meaning without attachment, and buddha, meaning fully cognizant of everything. By full cognizance, it is meant that one should know about his own constitutional position, as well as the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Well, what is our constitutional position? We are always subordinate to Krishna. And we should always be very respectful of devotees. And we should especially follow the instructions given to us by the Shastras and by devotees. So then one becomes fully cognizant of everything. By full cognizance, it is meant that one should know about his own constitutional position, as well as the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to Sri Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur, in this verse, Lord Vishnu is describing himself, or the Paramatma. The Paramatma is always distinguished from the embodied soul as well as the material world. Therefore, he has been described as Para. That Para, or Supreme Personality of Godhead, is Eka, meaning one. The Lord is one, whereas the conditioned souls, embodied within the material world, exist in many varieties of forms. There are demigods, human beings, animals, trees, birds, bees, and so forth. Thus, the living entities are not eka, meaning one, but many, as confirmed in the Vedas, nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam. The living entities who are many and who are entangled in this material world are not pure. However, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pure and detached. Due to being covered by the material body, the living entities are not self-effulgent. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Paramatma, is self-effulgent. The living entities, being contaminated by the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, are called saguna, whereas Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is nirguna, without material qualities, not being under the influence of the material modes. The living entities, being engaged in material qualities, are gunashrita, whereas the Supreme Personality of Godhead is gunashraya. The conditioned soul's vision is covered by material contamination. Therefore, he cannot see the cause of his actions, and he cannot see his past lives. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, not being covered by a material body, is the witness of all the activities of the living entity. But both of them, the living entity and the Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are Atma, or spirit. They are one in quality, yet they are different in so many ways, especially in regard to the six opulences the Supreme Personality of Godhead has in full. Full knowledge means that the Jivatma, the living entity, must know both his position and the Supreme's position. That is full knowledge. Well, we have to understand what it means to be a pure devotee. and what it means to be a neophyte devotee. A neophyte devotee should always follow the instructions of more advanced devotees. That is our, let's say, culture. We should always associate with people more advanced than ourselves and follow their instructions. So when Prabhupada first first came to the United States and he started chanting Hare Krishna, he attracted some people. And all he did was just simply chant Hare Krishna, and he didn't have any money at that time. So he would take one apple and cut it into 5 or 10 pieces and give one piece to each devotee. That was prasadam. So, but he never said, you have to do this, you have to do that. He said simply, chant and dance and take prasadam. And gradually, he developed, a group of young men and women to chant, dance, and take prasadam. And then one devotee asked Prabhupada, everything is nice, but are there any rules in Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada said, oh, yes, there are. I will give them to you. And then he wrote on a piece of paper 10 rules of Krishna consciousness. And when the devotees saw that, they were sorry that they asked that question. And you can see that those 10 rules are, you can look it up right now, so from that point on, it was not just have a lot of prasadam and chant Hare Krishna, and that's it. No, now it was chant Hare Krishna, have prasadam, and follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada, in the beginning, just gave prasadam to the devotees, and he lectured about Krishna, meaning giving knowledge of Krishna. But he didn't say about any rules or regulations. But when the devotees asked him, out of curiosity, are there any rules in Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada said, oh, yes, there are. I will give them to you. Then he wrote 10 rules of Krishna consciousness. Then they regretted ever asking that question. And from that point on, they had to follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. No meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication, chanting Hare Krishna 16 good rounds every day, coming on Sankirtan, etc. And as you see how Prabhupada, he was very, very careful about dealing with these new devotees because they were completely contaminated. But he didn't say that it's impossible for them, or he didn't think that it was impossible for them to become Krishna conscious. Whereas his God brothers, they thought that it was impossible for Western people to become devotees. So they never tried to, start the Hare Krishna movement in the West. Some of them came, three of his God brothers came, but they all failed. So they went back to India. And then nobody came for a long time. But Prabhupada came, and he did not give up. And he was able to actually make Western people genuine devotees. That was his vision. He understood that this is what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted. This is what was destined to happen. So therefore, Prabhupada came and he sacrificed everything in order to establish Krishna consciousness. And in the beginning, it was very difficult for him because he didn't have any money, he didn't have any devotees. And he had to deal with people who were basically completely in Maya. Okay, so Here are the 10 rules of Srila Prabhupada. Rise early before 4 a.m. This is the time of Brahma Muhurta, which is considered very auspicious for spiritual practices. Chant at least 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra daily on beads or japamala. Follow a strict vegetarian diet. Avoid meat, fish, and eggs. Avoid intoxication, including alcohol, drugs, tea, and coffee. No gambling or betting. No illicit sex. This means sex only within marriage and only for the purpose of procreation. Read Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita regularly. That means every day. Attend Mangal Arti and other temple programs regularly. Offer respect to the deities and spiritual master. Associate with and serve other devotees of Krishna. These principles are designed to help devotees develop purity, discipline, and a strong connection with Krishna. Now you can imagine the what you would call the the horror that the devotees felt, or those early devotees felt, when they got this piece of paper and they read what the rules were. These were things that they never did before, you know. But now they were obliged to do it. Of course, some devotees left, some of the people left, but the ones that stayed, and Prabhupada said, I'm not surprised by the ones that have left. I'm surprised by the ones that have stayed, you know, because that means that they have to follow all these rules. And it's not everybody's willing to follow these rules. Hare Krishna. Okay, so you can hang it somewhere.
Yeah, in your room it is there, that's all.
All right, so therefore, are there any questions? I think we spent a lot of time talking about things, but some of these things are very interesting. Are there any questions? Yes.
Maharaj, you mentioned about the difference between devotional service and serving your own personal senses. I have an example, Maharaj, maybe you can help me understand if that is real devotional service or not. For example, when it is Lord Rama's birthday, um, I really enjoy doing Abhishekam, Maharaj. I see that as a service to the Lord, but I also feel very happy, like seeing that, playing the mantras and doing the actual activity of the Abhishekam, I also enjoy it. That means my senses are also satisfied. I also have that experience through that.
Yeah.
So in that case, is that really, am I only doing it to serve the Lord, or because I'm also feeling happy in this process? Is there a personal motivation also there?
Well, some people are only happy when they engage in sense gratification. And some people are very happy by engaging in tapasya. Right? So what is the tapasya in Krishna consciousness? It's chanting Hare Krishna, minimum 16 rounds every day, having prasadam at least 3 times a day, going on Sankirtan, and engaging basically full day in different Krishna conscious activities. Does that sound horrible? No, it's all happiness, right? Whereas previously, tapasya was you have to be alone in a cave or some, you know, recluse. You have to be by yourself and you have to meditate 24 hours a day. Well, who can do that? Nobody can do that. But they try to do that. And after some time, they give up and they go back being sense gratifiers. Or they join Hare Krishna movement. So this whole idea of meditating 24 hours a day, it's impossible to do that. But that's what you have to do if you're a Mayavadi. That's their whole, let's say, philosophy, that you have to reject everything in the material world and give up everything in the material world and only engage in tapasya. And it's basically all meditation. Like, for example, if you go to a Mayavadi program, it's all silence. People are just meditating, right? So how long can you meditate like that, right? Uh, you can't really. I mean, the yoga schools today, they do some silent meditation, but it's only maybe a half an hour, an hour. It's not the whole day, and it's not every day, right? So the whole idea of using or trying to attain uh, perfection by meditation is a failure in this age in Kali Yuga. People cannot really do it. They try, but they very few people can do it. Let's put it like that. But to chant Hare Krishna, to dance, to have prasadam, to go on Sankirtan, to hear lectures, to engage in festivals, that's something you can do. And that is the tapasya in Krishna consciousness, chanting, dancing, and feasting. Does that sound like something horrible? No. But to sit down in a secluded place and do silent meditation 24 hours a day, that's impossible. Nobody can do that today. But that's what the Mayavadis are trying to do. They're trying to, if you go to a Mayavadi program, people are doing silent meditation, or sometimes they might do some other things also. But the main thing that they're doing is silent meditation. And how long can you silently meditate? Yeah. It's very difficult. But it's very easy to chant Hare Krishna and dance and also hear lectures and also have nice prasadam and go on Sankirtan. That is very easy and that is all very fun. It's a lot of fun to do that. But just sit in a closet and meditate 24 hours a day, that's impossible. You going to do that? You going to do that? No, you're not going to do that. So Prabhupada and basically his Gurudev Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did not ask us to do that. He asked us to have a balanced spiritual life, and but be honest and chant 16 good rounds of the Hare Krishna mantra every day and follow the regulative principles. No meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication. So that's what you have to promise when you get initiated. Right? No meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication, and always engage in Krishna conscious activities. Go on Sankirtan, regularly hear lectures given by genuine devotees, and eat only Krishna prasadam. So, this is what we promise to do when we get initiated. And it's something that you can do. You cannot meditate 24 hours a day in a closet or in a remote place. You can't do that. But you can follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness the rest of your life because it's doable and because it's the recommended way to make spiritual advancement in Kali Yuga. In Kali Yuga, the only mantra that you can say correctly is the Hare Krishna mantra. All other mantras are not recommended in this age. Now look at Haridas Thakur. What mantra did he chant? He only chanted Hare Krishna, didn't chant anything else. And he became a pure devotee, even though he was a Muslim, born in a Muslim family. But he took it seriously to chant almost 24 hours a day. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And he was born in a Muslim family, right? So that means that anybody can become Krishna conscious if they take the chanting Hare Krishna seriously and also take nice prasadam and also go on Harinam Sankirtan and also follow the regulative principles of Krishna consciousness. Those are things that you can do. They're not impossible. And they're fun also. Okay, so are there any questions? Yes.
I wanted to ask another question that Mataji asked. So can we say that sense gratification is something, is any activity that is done without intention to please Lord? Because it's very easy to get carried away. Like, I mean, for example, I can say I can eat very much, very opulent food and keep thinking and telling myself, oh, I want to be healthy, so that I can do more service.
You want to be what?
I can just, tell myself I want to be very healthy so that I can do more services. And keep
So
eating.
in other words, prasadam is not healthy food? Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean keep eating, in order to take a lot of opulent food all the time.
Yeah.
I can just make up the things, right? And then do the sense gratification under the name of Krishna consciousness or something else, right? Under the name of a service. So I was thinking, is it right way to say that if our activity is not pleasing to the Lord, if our intention was not to please the Lord, then it might be a sense gratification.
There's no question it might be, it is. No, everything depends on your motive. So is your motive to please Krishna and Guru, or is it to please yourself? That's the question you have to ask yourself. So is your motive to take prasadam before everybody else does, so you get all the best stuff, right? Or is it to be satisfied with whatever you can get when everybody comes to get prasadam, right? So what happens all the time is that before prasadam is served, people will go into the kitchen and serve themselves prasadam. That's a really bad thing to do. But unfortunately, there are a lot of devotees that do that here. You should never do that because that's selfishness. Setting aside prasadam before it's served to all the devotees, right? These things are there, you'd say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, it's wrong because it's being selfish. We should be willing to be self-controlled and to be equally disposed toward all living entities. So therefore, if I say, well, I'm going to go in the kitchen and make myself a big plate of prasadam before it's served so that I can have everything I want, right? Rather than wait until the prasadam is served to everyone. So that type of mentality is not good at all. We should be equal. In other words, if everybody else has to wait to get prasadam, we should also wait. If we think, no, I'm not going to wait, I'm going to go into the kitchen, I'm going to make a big plate of prasadam, I'll keep it somewhere, hide it somewhere, and then I'll do some service, but I've got my plates, waiting for me. That's like selfish, you know. We should always be equal. Whatever everybody else is supposed to do, we should also do. We should not try and circumvent the normal process of serving prasadam. This is a big problem oftentimes, because when people see that someone goes into the kitchen and makes a big plate of prasadam and then hides it somewhere, right? And then everybody else has to wait till the prasadam is served and so forth. It's not good. It's not a good example. Everything should be equal. So there shouldn't be any people that have special treatment and other people have less special treatment. Everything should be equal, especially in the distribution of prasadam. Because the Prabhupada said, the only sense gratification my devotees have is prasadam. And therefore, it should be served with love and devotion, and it should be very satisfaction. There should be a lot of satisfaction by eating nice prasadam. And Prabhupada said, it's the only sense gratification my devotees are going to have. If you take that away from them, then it's devastated. There won't be anything that they look forward to. So prasadam should always be distributed equally to everyone. And at the same time, there shouldn't be any, let's say, special devotees get special plates. I remember one time, a long time ago, they would pass a plate of prasadam that was touched by a advanced devotee, and they would pass it around to all the devotees, right? So they usually did like this, like the plate would be passed around, and it was a plate that a advanced devotee had touched or had eaten from. So the plate would be passed around to everyone, and you should take some of the prasad that was first eaten by a advanced pure devotee. Right? So I was not an advanced pure devotee, so I was just sitting in line, and then this plate would start coming slowly from one devotee to another, and usually they would sort of nudge you like that and say, "Here, this is a prasadam from a pure devotee." So I was always very uncomfortable. They would always nudge you like that, like with their elbows. Hey, take this. And so one day, when the plate came to me, I then went like this to the devotee that gave it to me, and gave him my plate. I said, "Hey, take this. This is a pure devotee also." So, you see these crazy things happen. There should be equality for everyone. There shouldn't be anything that seems to be unique. Everyone should be able to have prasadam equally as everyone else. And this should not be, before the prasadam is distributed, you go into the prasadam room and fill your plate full of prasadam, then you hide it somewhere, and then do your service, and then now you sit down later on and eat your prasadam. everything should be equal in Krishna, especially when it comes to prasadam. Otherwise, people will start feeling as if there are different grades of devotees. Right? No, we're all equal in the sense that we all do the same thing at the same time every day. If there are special people who get special treatment and special prasadam and so forth, it creates what you would call a system of uh, people who are special and other people that are not so special. Right? Everybody is special in Krishna consciousness, and everyone should have equal, uh, you know, access to Krishna prasadam, and everyone should be ready to serve, not ready to eat all the time. There should be service, and that service will help you control your mind and senses. So when you're very hungry, you want to eat, but you decide to serve the prasadam to the other devotees, your hunger will go away and you feel very peaceful in your mind to see the devotees satisfied. Then you can also sit down and take prasadam. So the whole idea of prasadam distribution should not become a, let's say, hereditary, uh, like hereditary, uh,
Right.
huh?
Right.
Right, yeah, hereditary right, Only certain devotees get first choice of the prasadam in the kitchen, and then the rest get whatever is remaining. Everything should be equal, especially in the distribution of prasadam. It's very important. Because Prabhupada said, the only sense gratification my devotees have is eating prasadam. So therefore, it should be nicely presented, and also it should be equally distributed. That way, everyone is on the same level as of being a humble devotee of the Lord. Right? Any other questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, slightly on a different note, having prasadam from the same plate, if my baby is asking, if child is asking a prasadam from your plate, or sometimes she or he is not able to finish the prasadam and we don't want to waste it, is that, like it says there's exchange of karmas between the souls, but is that all right? Is that an exception that for kids it's all right? Or
You mean when the children don't finish the prasadam on their plate?
yeah, and then we finish it, or vice versa, if they want to eat from our plate. So um, is that really heavily wrong?
Why should it be wrong?
I was told by many devotees it's exchange of karmas, like between the souls, so don't do that. But yeah, so just wanted to check.
In other words, if your child does not finish their plate of prasadam, and then they hand it to you,
Yeah,
and then you eat the prasadam of your child,
right.
that's wrong?
Yeah, that's what I was told by the devotees, that um
What, what,
it,
what demon told you that?
no. Okay, so they thought this exchange of karmas, like you're taking their karma upon yourself and vice versa, you're giving your karmas to them. So I thought, oh, I've been doing it for years.
Well, show me the verse in the Bhagavad Gita that says that is karma.
Oh, okay. Oh, no. I mean, okay, good to know. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
However, what should be done is a child should not get a plate full of prasadam, like a big, mountain of prasadam on their plate, knowing very well that they're most likely not be able to finish it. But they should be reassured that you give them a little bit of prasadam, but if they're still hungry, you'll come back and give them more, right? But if you just put the same amount prasadam in the plate of a young child as you would put in the plate of an adult. That's a mistake, because that little child is probably not going to be able to finish all that prasadam. And now you have a plate that still has prasadam in it. What are you going to do with it? Well, you end up throwing it away usually, right? So everything, you have to be very practical. Kids cannot eat a large amount of prasadam, and they can't eat prasadam that's highly has a lot of what you would call hot foods in it.
Spicy food.
Yeah, hot, spicy foods. They can't eat it. It's not possible for them to eat it. So we have to be careful. If that's the only thing you have is highly spiced food, then the young kids are not going to be able to eat it. They'll like burn their mouth or something. So you have to take into account everybody that is going to be served. Some people like very hot prasadam. Some people can't eat hot prasadam. So there has to be a middle point, that will be satisfactory to everyone. Now, this is important. Why? Because, as Prabhupada said, the only sense gratification my devotees have is eating prasadam. So if you make prasadam so spicy that it puts your mouth on fire, they're not going to be able to eat that. Most people are not going. Some people can, but most people can't eat that. So that's being very, let's say, abusive. So we have to take into account children cannot eat hot chilies all the time. They can't even eat it anytime, right? So why should we make prasadam very hot and full of chilies? We should take into account that the prasadam is going to be served to older people and also to regular people and also to children. So it should be something that everyone can eat, not just the person who is gung-ho on chilies, and then force also the children to eat that highly spiced food. They won't like it, and eventually they won't like prasadam. They'll say, "I don't want prasadam." All these things are important to have a balanced spiritual life. You have to take into account that the prasadam is going to be offered to elderly people, to children, to people, and to adults, and so forth. You can't say one shoe for everybody. Right? You have to take into account that children are going to be given prasadam, and if there's a lot of hot spices in it, they're not going to be able to eat it, and they won't eat it. Is that true? So who is going to be cognizant of how to distribute prasadam so that everyone can eat it? That has to be taken into consideration. Okay.
And Haribhakti Vilasa, that's compiled by Sanatana Goswami, has some rules about how to honor prasadam. One should not waste prasadam, one should not step over, sit on, or disrespect prasadam. Prasadam should be honored with gratitude and shared with others, especially with devotees. One should not eat prasadam in an unclean place or with sinful or atheistic person, unless giving it to upliftment.
Yeah, sometimes the people that serve prasadam, they'll give too much to kids, and the kids can't eat it all. So then they hand it over to the mother or father to eat. And then sometimes the mother and father can't eat it also, all of it. So what happens? It's thrown away. So things like that should not happen. Everything has to be balanced. So therefore, the people that serve prasadam, they should not, they should ask the people they're serving, said, do you want to have a little bit of prasadam? You want to have just a medium portion, or do you want me to fill your whole plate up, like a mountain? So you just can't go and start putting prasadam into the plate. You should ask people, how much do you want? All these things require sensitivity in what you do. Haribol. Okay, any other questions, comments?
One thing, in the day end, sometimes prasad will be remaining in the temple, Maharaj.
Sometimes what?
End of the day. End of the day.
End of the day.
Excess prasad.
So some devotees doesn't want to throw that because it's a prasad.
Yeah.
So for cleaning those utensils also, they doesn't want to throw. They keep it there and leave. It smells the next day. So we keep telling them, we request them to throw it so that it can be clean. If then it's a prasad, we cannot throw it. Is it correct, Maharaj?
Well, it's bad organization. Okay, it all starts with the cook. How much is the cook going to make? Then secondly, how nice is what is cooked? Is it cooked very nicely or not nicely? So there's a lot of, in order to serve prasadam, it requires a lot of intelligence. You can't think, oh, everyone will eat it, I'll just make it any way I want, and they have to eat it. No. Little kids, they can't stand eating food that's very highly spiced. And a lot of adults also don't like to eat very spicy prasadam. Like, for example, there are certain cooks, whenever they cook, they make it very spicy. And it's hard for the kids to eat that type of really spicy food. Right? So you have to take into consideration all these things. It's not one fit all for everybody. You have to understand there are children, they're going to be sitting to have prasadam. And if every time they sit down, there's only very hot, spicy prasadam, they're not going to want it anymore. They're going to say, well, I don't want to eat prasadam. So we have to take into consideration, who the people are that are going to take prasadam, and make sure that there's something that they can eat and not reject or leave it on their plate. The other thing is, when you're serving prasadam, you don't serve the same amount of prasadam to a little kid as you do to an adult. So all these things are important. It means that you have people that are very conscious and very, let's say, respectful of who they're serving. So you don't put a huge amount of prasadam on the plate of a little kid. He's not gonna be able to finish it. And a little kid is not gonna be able to eat very highly, highly hot food. They just can't do it. So there has to be a knowledge of how to serve prasadam and take into account who you're serving it to. And that requires intelligence. Sometimes, someone will cook and will make everything very, very hot. A lot of hot peppers and things like that. Now, that's that person's taste, but that's not the taste of everybody else. So the person like that should not cook. The cook should be someone who knows how to please Krishna and the devotees, not someone who forcing people to like what they like. Right? So this whole idea of prasadam distribution is very, very important because if we have always very nice prasadam, you're going to attract a lot of people to Krishna consciousness. And if we always have prasadam that is not spiced properly or overspiced, etc., then people are going to be left dissatisfied. So we have to be very careful who cooks and how they cook and how the food is also distributed. This is the only sense gratification that devotees are allowed to have. So if the prasadam is not good, then they're devastated because they all have the, let's say, desire to have nice prasadam. If there's not nice prasadam, then they're devastated because that's the only sense gratification they're going to have in Krishna consciousness. So it's very important, to have very good cooks and a lot of sensitivity about who you're serving to. The whole idea of serving prasadam and cooking prasadam is essential in Krishna consciousness. It's got to be done in a very high level so that everyone is going to be satisfied. Yes, somebody has something to say. Okay, any other questions?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Yes, Prabhu.
Maharaj, one more question on the prasadam itself. Whenever we do festivals, right, like a Holi festival or Ananda Mela, at that time we see the devotees who are actually regular, they understand. But there are so many devotees or some volunteers, they simply intentionally sign to make in such a way that they will come for some time, maybe 30 minutes or less, and they want to take all the benefit. They go and take all the prasadam. At that time, constant talk happens in all the festival organization meetings. Hey, we should not give, we should not allow, we should tell them. But even then, some devotees dodge and they take. How we need to handle that kind of a scenario, Maharaj? Because it's tough to tell them because they are not completely Krishna conscious people. At the same time, they want that kind of a benefit. That's the reason they're coming. It's very hard to convince them.
We need to have prasadam police. Well, Prabhupada, believe me, when he started the movement, he didn't have any money. So prasadam was just a little piece of an apple. He would cut it into different pieces. But later on, he would especially be concerned about the quality of the prasadam. And he would ask, is the prasadam nice? Are the devotees taking it nicely? And so forth. He wanted to know, how is the prasadam? Because if the devotees are not satisfied eating prasadam, that means that's the only thing that gives them real satisfaction in life. They're going to be frustrated. So Prabhupada always wanted the prasadam to be cooked nicely. Like one time, one lady cooked, one devotee lady cooked, and she put sugar instead of
Salt instead of sugar?
yes, she put sugar instead of salt. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody couldn't eat it. Right? So Prabhupada was really upset. He said, who did this? And the girl that did it got really afraid. She didn't even want to see Prabhupada. So Prabhupada was very, 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 like say, meticulous about prasadam should be very nice. nicely cooked, nicely distributed, and for the full satisfaction of the devotees. So, I think we have some pretty good cooks in Krishna consciousness in Seattle. But sometimes some cooks like to put a lot of mirchi into the prasadam, and some people don't like to do that. They have to be taught, look, take into account the children are going to eat the prasadam also. And if it's too spicy, they're not going to be able to eat it. So prasadam is very important in Krishna consciousness. And if it's nicely done, you make devotees. And if it's not nicely done, you lose devotees. So that should be taken very seriously. Now, what to do? There has to be training. Just anybody can't just cook. People have to be trained properly how to cook, how to spice, how to serve, how to clean, etc. The other problem is cleaning. Usually there's like a mountain of dirty dishes, and a couple of devotees have to come and spend like 4 hours washing all the pots. Have you done that? Well, if you have people helping you, okay, you can do it. But if you're alone and you have to wash all the pots, it's not fun at all. So all these things have to be taken into consideration. Actually, Prabhupada's principle was, if you cook, you have to wash your utensils, right? You just can't cook and then leave the utensils for someone else to wash. Now, in the case of large utensils for festivals, how can the cook also wash all those utensils? But in general, the general rule should be, if you cook, you have to wash the utensils. You should not just leave them for someone else to wash. If they're big utensils, then you have to arrange for someone to help you so that you have someone who's going to wash the big utensils as soon as they're given to be washed. You should, if you're a good cook, you never leave the utensils used on a big pile for someone else to wash. You have to make sure that you have another person or persons helping you wash the utensils as soon as they come to, as soon as the food is distributed. That is real organized kitchen culture. As soon as the utensil is finished, used, it should be washed right away. So therefore, it's not just one cook. It's one cook and one utensil washer. So that at the end of the cooking, all the utensils are washed. That is perfection of kitchen science. So it requires a few people working together to do that. Otherwise, you end up, at the end of the day, it's a huge pile of dirty pots. And one or two poor souls have to wash all of them. And that's not really good. And so all these things, you have to take into account all these things. If you're going to cook, you have to have someone that's going to help wash the dishes. Or you have to wash the dishes. If you cook, then you have to wash your own dishes. Right? Now, if you're going to do major cooking, then you have other people that you talk to help you, so that as soon as the pot comes finished, it should be washed. And by the end of the the cooking, all the pots are washed. They're not there all day long waiting for a couple of people to come late in the evening to wash everything. That's real organization. That's real Krishna consciousness. And by the way, Some people like washing pots. Some people don't like to do it. But if you're going to be a cook, you have to have a team that are helping you, so that as soon as the pot comes to the kitchen, empty, it should be washed. It shouldn't stay there all day long waiting for a group of people to wash it late at night. Okay, so all these things require consciousness, just like the temple. Sometimes the temple is not swept nicely or cleaned nicely. And you come into the temple and you see there's some unclean things. You shouldn't walk past it. You should feel responsible. It's like one time I went to see a property, and the owner of the property was showing it to me. And at one point he saw there was a piece of paper on the ground, so he picked it up himself. Because that's his property, and there's somebody left a piece of paper on the ground. He didn't want to, he picked it up himself because he wanted his property to be clean. So we should be like that. We should consider the temple as our property, and we should never let anything be left on the ground or unclean, etc. We should feel personally responsible to make sure the temple is always clean and everything is in proper order, so that when people come, just like one time a lady came to the temple and she saw that some of the curtains were dirty. And she said, "Oh my God, I'm not going to come to this temple again. They have dirty, curtains." And she said it out loud, and then she left. Because in her house, all the curtains are very clean, and if they get dirty, she has them washed right away. So she noticed that when she came to our temple, and she walked away. She left because in her house, all the temples, all the curtains are very clean. So we have to take into account, every little aspect of the temple, and it should always be clean. And if you walk in the temple and there's some part of the temple that's not clean, you should feel personally responsible to clean it. And just as you would clean your own house. This is the house of Krishna. It should always be kept very, very clean, even cleaner than your own house. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.